Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please stand, take a place at your table. And if you would, have silence for the presentation of the colors, which will be done this evening by Sea Scout Ship 24, the Jolly Roger, from the Sam Houston Area Council. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Simpson, Harris County Republican Party Chairman. I welcome you to our 2018 Lincoln-Reagan dinner. And to get us started tonight is Harris County Republican Party Chaplain, Ms. Beverly Ferguson. Give us the invocation.
The Lord said, open your mouth and I'll speak, so I'm going. This is a great opportunity for us to be here again, and this isn't a time for sadness, but joy. And all of y'all look so beautiful, and there's a good spirit here in the room. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for what you are going to do here tonight. I thank you for each and every one. It's your grace and your mercy that we are here. It's your grace and your mercy that protects us. It's your grace and mercy that leads and guides us. It's your grace and mercy when the enemy comes in like a flood and tries to destroy us, but God. I thank you, Lord, that you are our protector. I thank you, Lord, for our speaker tonight, Congressman Scalise. The devil had a plan, but God, and he's here tonight. And I thank you so much for what you are going to do in this place. I thank you so much that you, God Almighty, are the one that you're the one that leads and takes care of everything, even in our country. Let us not forget whose we are. And you know, as I was thinking about this prayer, and I thought about Congressman Scalise. Where's he sitting? Where is he? Is he in here? Right here? And I thought about it, and I said, what would his prayer be after what happened to him? And I got to thinking, I was like, you know, he was probably real thankful. He's thankful to be here, and that's God. And I thank God that he is here. I'm excited that he's here, and thank you. And let everybody say amen.
Thank you, Beverly. And now to lead us in the pledge to the U.S. flag is one of the Texas Supreme Court justices from Harris County, none other than Texas Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman.
Good evening. I'm honored to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Guzman. Now to lead us in the pledge to the Texas flag is Harris County Commissioner Jack Morman.
Good evening, everyone. Please join me in the pledge to our state's flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
And now the inimitable Hope Johnson will lead us in the national anthem. That's a good thing.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right, face, forward, march. March on, march. Forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank the color guard for all their work here. Please be seated. And I'll ask the party's finance director, Joe Slovacek, come to the stage, have some announcements. Thank you, Joe. Hard to get him to shut up.
Hello. Hello. Okay, sit down, shut up.
That's yours.
Hello. You're going to hear a lot about God tonight, Congressman. Is everybody going to ignore me, or are you going to listen to me? We're going to pay tribute to some people here tonight, and we're going to have a nice party and a good program. Hello, Judge. Can I get your attention? Holly, sit down. Clint Moore, sit down. Sit down. Sit down and shut up. Okay, listen. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't sure if we could pull this event off. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't sure who your chairman of the Harris County Republican Party would be. 3 weeks ago, you elected Paul Simpson, chairman of the Harris County Republican Party, an honest, trustworthy man of integrity that none of us take for granted. It's like that commercial with Mikey. Who's going to taste it? Let Mikey taste it. Who wants to be the chairman of the Harris County Republican Party? Paul Simpson. Thank you for electing Paul Simpson, and thank you for coming tonight. God had a plan, and he's part of it. We have a lot of elected officials here tonight, and while you're standing around ignoring me, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to close your eyes. I'm not going to tell you to take a knee, I'm not going to tell you to do that, but I'm going to ask you to think about your prayers every night that you say to God when you thank Him for your blessings, when you thank Him for your good health, when you thank Him for the fact that you have a job, you have a career, you have a family. And I want you to understand that every 2 years, sometimes every 4 years, and in some cases, Raphael, every 6 years, these elected officials have to reapply for their employment. You think about that. You have a job every 2, every 4, every 6. That's a heavy burden for these people. This is their income, this is their livelihood, this is their job, this is their career. This is why we call them public servants. What I'd like to do now is honor and introduce and welcome and celebrate and thank our elected officials. Would you join me in doing that? And by the way, they had to pay $175 to eat just like you did, okay? Nobody got in free. First, I'm going to take our group at the very top, our U.S. Senate. Raphael, you're it, I guess. Ted's in Washington, trying to hold down the fort. I'd also like all the congressmen who miraculously voted today and flew to Houston, Texas to be with their friend, Steve Scalise. Could all of our congressmen please stand up? We all believe that that tax bill, Kevin, that you passed a couple of months ago is going to save everybody money. All this talk about trillion-dollar deficit, all that's going away because everybody's going to be busy. Everybody's going to be busy. The United States is busy. Would you please welcome all of our Texas Supreme Court judges who are all the way from Austin here. And our Court of Criminal Appeals judges from Austin. Thank you for all of our state senators and state representatives. If you're present, please stand up. And by the way, these are the guys that are getting rich. These are the guys that are getting rich. $600 a month, okay? Don't feel sorry for them. Would you please welcome our appellate court judges, 1st and the 14th, and all those others, 3rd, 9th, whatever they are. Please stand up. We have a number of district court judges, both civil and criminal. These are the guys that you get to get out of jail free card from, the criminal district judges. The criminal and civil district judges, the family court, district court judges, would you please stand up? County court judges, both civil and criminal, please stand up. Thank you. Our county officials, Steve Raddick and Jack Morman, are here representing everybody else. And by the way, others are missing. But Steve Raddick, Jack Morman, please stand up. Thank you. And we have a whole bunch of precinct chairs. Would you please stand up, precinct chairs? This is what makes it work. That's the grassroots that delivered Paul Simpson as our chairman. Thank you for what you did. We also have a number of consulate generals here. Would you please welcome them? All the Russian spies, please stand up. Folks, we owe a lot to these public servants. Would you please stand and thank everybody together? Stand up and give them a clap. Thank you for that. We're now going to watch Thank you for that. We're going to watch a video by Cindy Siegel, and then we will break bread. God bless you all, and thank you for re-electing Paul Simpson. Oh, well, Dan Patrick was a state senator. Dan Patrick, I didn't call you out specifically, but guess what? You're going to get to talk. Would you stand up? Thank you.
We all know the challenges that Harris County's size and diversity presents to us as a party. Under Chairman Paul Simpson's leadership and with the support of our donors and volunteers, the Harris County Republican Party has expanded its engagement across the entire county, with an emphasis on working with everyone in our party, bringing new people into the GOP. I am proud to have seen this firsthand. I'm Cindy Siegel, Treasurer of the Harris County Republican Party and President of the Greater Houston Council of Federated Republican Women. The Greater Houston Council, the TFRW, and the HCRP worked together to start a brand new Republican Women's Club in Baytown. Chairman Simpson is actively engaged with Republican women's groups across the county, meeting with us regularly. Our party, through the staff and volunteers at the headquarters and in our satellite offices, is collaborating with various groups to broaden our base. None of this would be possible without the continued support of the people in this room, our donors, elected officials, and grassroots activists. As a former mayor of Bel Air for 8 years, I know that elections can be difficult at best, and this primary season was especially challenging for many in our party. It all boils down to this: the primary is over, and it's time to unite our efforts. We saw March 6th that Texas is far from turning blue, but in November, we also know that Harris County will be one of the biggest battlefields. The Harris County Republican Party is stronger than ever, and the fight in November is one for which we are ready. But we cannot do it alone. To be successful, it will take each of our efforts and support to turn out the Republican vote in Harris County. Thank you for all that you do. Now let's go out and win together in November.
Ladies and gentlemen, ask you your attention now for our first speaker of the evening. Is someone we all know quite well, done a great job for Texas, our Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is the 51st Attorney General of Texas. As the state's top law enforcement officer, Attorney General Paxton leads more than 4,000 employees in 38 divisions and 117 offices around Texas, including 750 attorneys who handle more than 30,000 cases annually. It's a huge job, and he does an incredible work with it, gets incredible results. Today, Attorney General Paxton is focused on protecting Texans and upholding Texas laws and our constitutions. Fighting federal overreach, Attorney General Paxton filed 22 lawsuits against the Obama administration during the 2 years he was in office in those years, of which 5 were heard in the U.S. Supreme Court. During his tenure in office, Attorney General Paxton has won major cases for Texas, including some very recently on immigration, school rights, EPA rules and regulations, and religious freedom. Stopping the EPA's regional haze rule averted higher energy rates for Texas. Businesses were protected and jobs preserved, and he's been a champion in fostering and protecting religious freedom here in Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Attorney General Ken Paxton.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Paul for introducing me as Attorney General Ken Paxton, because for those of you who don't know, my wife just won a Senate primary, and up in my area, her area now, I'm known as Mr. Angela Paxton, so it's great to be called Ken Paxton. So I want to thank you all, because 4 years ago, about now, you all gave me a primary victory, and then when I was in the runoff, 70%, but it's getting even better because this time you guys gave me 100%, so I want to thank you for the support in Harris County. So as you all know, the last 19 days have been pretty tense in Austin, Texas. We have obviously had a very intense time with this bomber. And I want to say how much I appreciate what law enforcement has done over the last 19 days. Because if you think about what happened with the Unabomber and that it took 18 years to put that person away, and that it took 7 years to get the Atlanta bomber during the Olympics, and you look at what law enforcement did, the combination of state law enforcement, my office, 500 federal officials, including 400 FBI agents, Austin PD, and they were able to track this guy down in 19 days. I think that our law enforcement deserves a great round of applause. I also wanted to tell you about an opportunity I had this week. On Tuesday, I was invited to the Oval Office to talk to the president about immigration and what Texas thought about immigration. He obviously thought we had an interest in that, and so we met with him, and we also had another 14 people at this table. We met at the Roosevelt Room, which is right off the Oval Office. It's sort of the president's conference room, and there were 2 senators. I sat in between them. We had a few congressmen, some sheriffs from around the country. We had some victims who had been had family members harmed by illegals, and we had the opportunity, as the president walked in, I ended up sitting right across from him and the Homeland Security Secretary. And when he walked in, it was kind of cool. He actually, the first thing he did was says, "Hi, Ken, you guys are doing a great job in Texas," which I appreciated. And then we had the opportunity to go around the table, and each person got a few minutes. I had about 5 minutes to brief the president, first on the Austin bombings, and second on immigration. And what I told him is that it was a huge issue to Texas. It was a huge issue that we had put hundreds of millions of dollars, which Dan Patrick can testify to, and your state legislators can testify to. We've done a lot of funding that we shouldn't have had to do. We're also the only state that tracks statistics on crimes committed by illegal aliens. And then I also talked about how we had just won our sanctuary city lawsuit defending what the legislature had done. We just got a huge victory from the Fifth Circuit. It was a huge win, and we also, I informed General Sessions, who was 2 people down from me, that Texas would be joining an amicus brief. We'd actually be writing an amicus brief, which is a friend of the court brief, to support what his administration was doing with the California sanctuary city. So they were also pleased to know that Texas would be involved in that. The one thing that I came away from with that meeting is not just this issue of immigration, but I came away with the reality that the president really does care what's going on in Texas. He realizes that this is ground zero, and that Texas is key to him. It's key to supporting Republicans. It's key to supporting our Constitution. And in our opinion, it's key to the survival of this nation. And so, just as he feels that way about Texas, I could say that about Harris County. Without Harris County doing what it needs to do in our elections coming up, we're all in trouble. Not just Texas, but the entire nation. So I want to thank you all for everything that you do for our party, everything that you do for our country, because ultimately this is ground zero for our ability to not only win Texas, but ultimately to keep this country a constitutional country that believes in the Constitution, believes in separation of powers, and continues to give us opportunities that we've had for so long. God bless you, and thank you for having me here.
The predictions are very serious. They expect Harvey to be a major storm, a Category 3 at least, with winds topping 110 miles an hour. Then the Hurricane Center says it expects it to stall and dump heavy rains for days.
Here locally, this is what I want to prepare you for. It's a widespread, life-threatening flash flood event. I'm saying that, and you're going to continue to hear that over and over.
Yeah, we are dealing with record-breaking floods. Unfortunately, the National Weather Service had to actually add a new color to the maps to display over 30 inches of rainfall, and we have just surpassed that, over 40 inches of rain.
It killed over 100 of our fellow Texans, destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes and cars, caused over $160 billion in damages, and changed lives forever. Experts agree Hurricane Harvey was the most significant tropical cyclone rainfall event in United States history. It broke the previous national record for rainfall set at 52 inches in Hawaii over 60 years ago. Harvey broke that record at 7 different locations across Southeast Texas. It rained so hard and for so long that flood gauges failed. Radar found rainfall at 70 inches. Yet in the face of this unprecedented catastrophe, we witnessed something even greater: the indomitable spirit of Texans. Compassion, resiliency, love, leadership. Perhaps nobody exemplified this more than Houston icon Jim Mattress Mac McInvale.
The door opens, this little girl walks in, she's Hispanic. She's about 6 years old. She's crying, she's petrified, she's traumatized. And her and her parents and a guy that I think was her uncle, they're all wet because they've been wading up the feeder road in 3.5 feet of water trying to get here. And she walks up the front where I'm at, and she's shivering now and freezing because she's in this cold with being wet. And she says to me, can we stay here tonight? And I've heard my people cry. And we have a saying at the front of the store that says the American West was not settled by men and women who had taken a course on how to be a pioneer. And we didn't think about the liability, we didn't think about anything else. We thought about people, and that's what we did, was help people, and that's what the entire community did, was help people. And for one brief moment in time, we forgot about right-wing politics or left-wing politics, and we came together to help people, and that's what we should do every day.
That same selfless scene played out across our community. Everyday Texans saving, taking in, and feeding victims. Tens of thousands volunteered in shelters, delivering food, blankets, shoes, baby supplies, and toiletries to those in need. The Cajun Navy worked non-stop for days alongside our first responders to rescue those trapped in flooded homes. In the Cypress area, specialty car shop owners Josh and Travis Hersing put their business on hold, taking their 5-ton high-water truck as well as boats into deluged neighborhoods nearby.
All of our parents raised us to help if we could help, and so we decided just to go out and help, and try to do something good for the community. And we had all the stuff to do it, so instead of sitting around, we decided to get to work, and it worked out perfect.
And everyone that we showed up to pick up was happy and thankful and offered money, every single thing that they had that they could give up, they would, in a heartbeat. We would come here to drop them off and drop off their families, and they would turn around and say, hey, wherever y'all are going next, I'll go help. It was crazy. How much people were so ready to just give up everything they had to go help other people, even after their houses were completely submerged in water.
Meanwhile, our elected officials also rose to this incredible challenge, providing compassionate and at times bold leadership. Disaster response always starts at the local level. Fortunately for us, Harris County boasts the best Office of Emergency Management in the country.
The state has a great plan, and they are a great partner, but the first response is always going to be local, and if we don't do our job, then it doesn't matter what the state comes in with later. And in this case, again, no fault of their own, the state couldn't get here for the first couple of days, and neither could FEMA. So we were on our own. So if Harris County had been in a weaker situation, we couldn't have responded.
Pulling together, doing whatever it took. The leadership from local and state officials came in various forms. County Clerk Stan Stannard stepped up to drive supply trucks when the Red Cross couldn't get equipment in. District Clerk Chris Daniel coordinated flood preparation and recovery efforts for the largest justice system in Texas, a massive challenge. County constables and sheriffs worked round the clock responding to distress calls. A chance meeting in Cypress found Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick running into Josh and Travis Hersing in their high-water truck and spent the day with them going house to house, getting stranded residents to safety.
I saw this big truck filled with people in the rain coming up Spring Cypress. And I got out and I kind of flagged them down and said, who are you guys? Because I didn't know who they were. We're the Army truck. I thought it was the National Guard. I didn't know because we were all kind of in the dark at that point. And then they told me, They were just a bunch of guys and their staff here, young guys. They had bought that truck, and they put a note up on Facebook, if we can help you, and you can have someone here pick you up at our shop where it was dry, we'll come and get you. And I thought that was remarkable. And so I said, I want to go out with you tomorrow. And that's how it all started.
No government at any level nor community is ever completely ready for a single storm to dump 50+ inches of rain. But disasters like Harvey also reveal the unlimited potential for caring citizens to help others, bringing out the best in all of us.
Once the storm left, the rain stopped, so many people just started going out, finding folks that needed help mucking out their house. And I've heard over and over and over from people whose homes had been just destroyed, say this whole group of people came in and helped me clean up the house and get the debris to the curb, and then just moved on to the next house without ever even saying what their name. So we've got all these unnamed heroes out there, and you know, that just sends chills up you.
In politics, we all go to our fighting corners in elections. But at that point in time, there were no Republicans or Democrats. There were no moderates or conservatives or liberals. It was one Texas. And no one on the roof cared who was in the boat to get him. And no one in the boat cared who they were rescuing off the roof.
It's like Winston Churchill once said, what type of people do they think we are? We're Texans, we help each other. We've been doing that since the Alamo, and not gonna change.
Tonight, the Harris County Republican Party proudly salutes the caring citizens and elected officials who helped our community respond to and start the recovery from Hurricane Harvey.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to move to a roundtable discussion before we go to the keynote speaker, which I know we're all here to hear. But this is going to be addressing a number of issues facing Harris County, and particularly the elections this coming year. So we've invited a journalist to moderate. Don't throw anything, please. Erica Grieder here, ladies and gentlemen. She's now the Metro columnist for the Houston Chronicle. Please give her a round of applause. Erica wrote for Texas Monthly, I believe, for about 5 years. She was in a sympathetic view there for the conservative causes. She's now in Houston, writing for the Houston Chronicle. And the title of a book she wrote recently is "Big, Hot, Cheap, and Right: What America Can Learn from the Strange Genius of Texas." So I think she understands our state. She's here again to talk about politics. She also wrote timely an article just, I believe, last week with the Houston Chronicle, what Texas Republicans can't coast to victory this year. And I think that's very much true, and it's going to be something we want to emphasize. So joining us on the panel with the ones who will be subject to Erica's grilling tonight, of course, Congressman John Culberson from Harris County. State Representative Jim Murphy from Harris County as well. And Harris County Clerk Chris Daniel and myself as well. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello. Hi. Thank you all for having me here to moderate. It's always good to be here. It's great to be some friends here, and it's a nice trip down memory lane. And I was last here in 2016. I remember standing at that back wall, gossiping with my sources who were working on Senator Cruz's campaign, and talking about the delegate count and delegate strategies. So perhaps doing some colluding. That was 2 years ago, just about. And it's been a long 2 years. I've lost my voice, as you can see, but it's good to be in Harris County. And so I thought I would start by asking our panelists, 7 months post-Harvey, in Harris County and in your districts, what do you see as the priority issue? And then long-term, what issue are you most worried about and think we want to focus here on tonight?
Our highest priority is to ensure that the federal money, which the Texas delegation working together with the Florida delegation, we were able to put together the $141 billion hurricane relief package that because of my work in the Texas House, I'm house trained, Kevin Brady. We cannot, by the way, say enough good about Kevin Brady. he passed the largest tax cut in the history of the United States. And it's an extraordinary achievement, Kevin. And we did work together as a team, and coming out of the Texas House, Jim, it was a great, that skill set allowed us to put together, I was able to write language into that hurricane appropriation bill to make sure that Houston is first in line, because the money has to be allocated to those areas that have multiple flood events that were declared presidential disasters. So that, our highest priority now that that bill has passed, is to make sure the money gets in the hands of our devastated homeowners. Because we've got tens of thousands of homeowners all over Harris County who are still living on the second floor of their home. My brother has been in a driveway, been in a trailer in his driveway. He was flooded out. My wife's family was flooded out. So we're looking to make sure that money reaches the hands of homeowners as quickly as possible so they can rebuild their lives. And then we're going to build out the flood control infrastructure in Harris County and get that third reservoir built at the headwaters of Cypress Creek to protect all of us in Harris County.
Okay, anyone else want to?
I don't have any particular jurisdiction over flood control money as county chair, but I do want to comment. I think it was a good example of seeing Harvey of how effective Republican leadership is at the federal, state, and local level. I think all of our officials perform very admirably. To some degree, it was a contrast, I have to say this, with the way the Democrats have conducted some of their business. But we're all incredibly proud, not only of the Texans and the Houston citizens, what we did as community pulling together through our churches and organizations, but also the governments that performed so well. And I look forward to that being continuing in the future in the rebuild effort.
One thing I would add, Erica, just as we start this rebuilding process, there are some details that need to be addressed. And Congressman, we've talked about them. You've been incredibly supportive, and thank you and Senator Cruz and certainly Chairman Brady for their help getting money into Texas. But now we talk about trying to help these communities rebuild. I represent that area along Buffalo Bayou where so many people were flooded with the release of water from the dams. And unfortunately, the way the program is set up now, largely, people that are higher income that had greater damage are essentially redlined out of getting most of these funds. And we've got to work with our counterparts at HUD and FEMA to make sure that we aren't means testing relief, that if you have a couple $100,000 of damage to your home, you can find some relief. And for the people I represent, that is a huge issue. So it's great to have the infrastructure dollars coming. The repair dollars are coming as well. But we've got to make sure it benefits all the people that are affected.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of our short-term issue, if I may, John. And then I think long-term, we want to do these prevention items. And there's work for everybody. There's work for us at the state level. There's work for our feds. There's work for the county. But we are finding new ways to work together. I want you all to know that. We're finding new ways for county and state to do things that we've never had maybe the need to do so. And there's plenty of work to go around. So I'm saying nothing negative about what we've done so far, but acknowledging, when you look at the homes in my district, maybe half are started rebuilding, and the other half are still wondering what's happened to their lives. So we've got some work to do.
Chris, I saw you in that video. Do you want to add anything else? It sounds like you were sort of a frontline responder.
I'll defer on how we spend the money to our commissioners and especially our county treasurer, Orlando Sanchez, who's here tonight. But I want to give a special shout out to Dave Martin for his efforts in trying to make sure that the San Jacinto River is dredged. Because without the dredging in Kingwood and in Humboldt and all along in Precinct 2 and Precinct 4, the next small rain will flood that entire neighborhood.
And, one thing
We also had a lot of help from the Louisiana delegation. I want to be sure to give a special thank you to Steve Scalise. He, as the majority whip, was instrumental in helping us put together that hurricane package because they've been through this. Steve has experienced it firsthand, and he was invaluable in helping us put together $141 billion of relief for Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico.
Rightly noted.
Thank you, Steve.
And one thing I've wondered personally, I mean, of course, the Gulf Coast is no stranger to storms, to floods. I mean, people in Houston have seen this before, but Harvey was really pretty singular in both the scope of the catastrophe and the way you would have had to experience it. I mean, I remember there's this tweet I saw on Friday night, the Friday night that it made landfall, 11 p.m. from the National Weather Service. Life-threatening, catastrophic flooding expected through Tuesday as Harvey meanders over the region. That's the most terrifying forecast I could think of. Like, meandering over the region in an unpredictable way. And the region was like half the state. You know, it's a big state. So going through this, and of course, as a person observing in Austin and worrying for my friends in Houston, and knowing that we couldn't help you directly until the rain stopped, did going through that change how you think, or your priorities, or your sense of, you know, planning for against the risk of future such events? Did it change how you feel about such events? I'm sorry to ask about your feelings, guys, but
I think it touched all of us. Everyone in this room either had affected you directly, or we have a family member, or a friend, or neighbors. And as the governor said, we didn't ask any questions. We just stepped up to help each other. We all did jobs that day we didn't expect to do. I became a dispatcher of sorts, just working out of the house, contacting law enforcement, moving checkpoints. Congressman Garrett Graves from Louisiana contacted me. He said, I have 110 trailers carrying 100 boats full of jambalaya and beans and rice and water and diapers heading your way. They're called the Cajun Navy. Where do I send them? Yeah. And it was magnificent, the way everybody stepped up to help. All over the country, came to Houston to help us. I met families from Florida. I met a young family from South Carolina and North Carolina that drove all the way here to help us. So I think it showed the spirit of Texas and how we look after each other. It was really a great moment for the area, for the region. Yeah. But it was also, I think, as Jim said, energized all of us to work together in a way we have never done before, I think, to make sure that the state, the federal, and county officials are all working together to make sure the money gets to people who need it, that we rebuild and expand our flood control infrastructure to protect against the next big storm. And that's really the good that's going to come out of this. We've got a record amount of money on the way, and Texas is first in line, and I was able to help make sure that as the appropriator for Southeast Texas.
My own mother lost everything in Harvey. She had over 6 feet of water in her house in Friendswood, and despite all that, we were all pitching in to help. I mean, I know my commissioner over here, Steve Raddick, he and his son were in boats rescuing people nonstop around the clock. You had folks throughout this room who stood up to the plate, unlike the Democrats, one in particular who refused to answer the phone to cancel jury service and close the courts because he was worried about a foot of water in his house. Meanwhile, my mother has 6 feet of water in their house, and she's calling me to check on me. The leadership in this room, Paula Goodhart, who I know is in the back there, David Farr, who I hope is here, they stood up. They did not neglect their duty. They stood up to the plate and made sure that the job was done, unlike many, many, many of the Democratic colleagues.
Well, that's a bit, can I push back a bit? I mean, we just had this kumbaya moment of, you know, during Harvey, we were all helping our neighbors. We didn't ask which party you were, and there were Democrats who were.
I'm naming names after the fact. During the emergency, we didn't ask who you were. We did our part. But I remembered who stood up and helped and who didn't.
The sheriff was going around with a kayak and rescuing people. He had, like, you know, just kayaking around. So, anyway, would you like to add any?
I just want to echo what Governor Patrick talked about, and that was the incredible work by our communities of faith. And it wasn't government that rescued almost anybody. It was neighbors. It was the Cajun Navy that evacuated us. Some guy from, actually he's from Minnesota, but he's in the Cajun Navy. I don't understand, but my wife told me to quit trying to control things and get in the boat and leave, and we did. But we were out mucking out houses with some people from St. John Vianney, and we were over in Fleetwood. And I saw some people from the local Methodist church, the Breakfast Club, Memorial Drive Methodist, that I go speak at every couple of months, and I asked them what they were doing. They said, we're cleaning up this house over here, we're the Methodist. And I said, oh, that's good. They go, well, Second Baptist, they got that house right over here. And the Mormons, they're over in this house over here. And the people that were there from FEMA and HUD were talking about, you know, they had been to Katrina, they had been to Sandy, and they'd never seen anything like what Texans just did. So pretty incredible, and we are blessed to live with neighbors like this. Yeah.
One other comment I've got, Katrina, sorry, you said Katrina, Erica, as a recovering engineer, I came to appreciate to a great degree the farsightedness of the founders and forefathers of Houston who 80 years ago suffered floods and put in infrastructure to deal with flood control and water storage. And some of what we're doing now may be for 2 generations from now to be saved, in tremendous contrast to California, which hasn't even figured out how to save water for their next drought. So it's the farsightedness, I think, of leaders of Texas and Houston that have been blessed us in the past and will continue to bless us in the future.
Well, I would like to add that, like most Americans, like all Americans who were not here at the time, I was very moved by the scenes we saw, by the courage, the compassion, the neighborliness we saw, the way everyone came together. Also, I was really thankful for the people of Harris County doing that, because I feel like for the nation as a whole, to watch that unfold was really affirming at a time when we needed some sense of still being a country that can come together. So they should follow more of our example, I think. With that said, Paul, you wanted to talk about politics. I agreed to talk about politics.
Imagine that.
I think it's possible that the party asked me to moderate this so I could be mischievous and question you a little bit. We just went through a primary. I was really excited about this primary and excited to see the results of it, because in 2016, as we all know, we had a very, very tumultuous and very contentious election, which had the effect of making all of our previous data sets a bit hard for me as a journalist to really feel that sure about. And so, this is our first data set, the Texas primary, and I have some thoughts about it. But let me ask you all first, kind of what were your takeaways looking at the results from Harris County, and from Harris County in particular, and from Texas?
Well, a couple of different things. One is, I think, as Lieutenant Governor's pointed out, the blue wave didn't really hit Texas. It hit against a red seawall. However, in politics, there's a saying I like to use it: there's only two ways to run. That's unopposed or scared. And we're pretty much opposed everywhere. So we always run scared. It's going to be critical this year that we unite and pull together to win in November. It's going to be a challenge, particularly in Harris County. It always is. But I think the primary taught us some lessons. One is that the Republicans are motivated in a considerable way. They didn't really have a good reason to. Again, as Dan Patrick said in his talk, we didn't have any great, tremendously hotly contested, well-funded statewide primaries as we did in 2014. But in Harris County, we ended up with a 12% increase in our turnout, which is well above the growth in voting age population, which was only about 4 or 5%. So we had a lot of Republicans turning out just to vote, and in many places they didn't have much to vote on, other than they wanted to turn out and vote, and they're motivated as well, and that excites me quite a bit. It's also interesting where they turned out. The #1 district in Harris County, where the House district where the Republicans turned out, was Jim Murphy's district. Stand up.
No, I do that only because I have such great precinct chairmen that turn those people out. But I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Paul, because one of the things I noticed, we turned out really well, which, those people aren't even in their houses. So that's a credit to them that they literally went that extra mile, right, and voted. But the other two districts that were the second and third highest were 134, which is Meyerland and Bel Air. Horrible flooding devastation. John, I'm going to give you credit for turning those people out. And then 127, which is Kingwood and Dan Huberty. So the areas hardest hit by Harvey turned out about 50% higher participation levels. So credit to them.
That's a great tribute to everybody here in this room in the Harris County
for
Party.
all of us serving and all of us running, you better pay attention to that issue, because these people have deservedly some pretty high expectations and some pretty critical needs. And when you see that kind of turnout, it's a bell ringer for me.
Well, and the National Democrat Party has targeted us. Congressional District 7, first represented by George Herbert Walker Bush, and then Bill Archer, Kevin's predecessor on the Ways and Means Committee. District 7 has been targeted by the National Democrat Committee because they understand that if they flip Congressional District 7, if they replace me with a Democrat, then they have just turned Harris County blue. If they flip Harris County, the Democrats know they turned Texas blue. And this room, none of us is going to let that happen. They're going to hit a seawall right here in Harris County. And we're all going to work harder than we have ever worked before to make sure that we turn out every Republican in District 7 to make sure we reelect Judge Ed Emmett, all of our judges, all of our countywide officials, and make sure that we keep Texas red. And District 7's at the center of it, and we're locked and loaded and ready to go.
And to follow up on the rest of the question, Erica, certainly the Democrat base is motivated, and there was a lot of talk about their turnout. What we actually saw was there were a lot of Bernie supporters, a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, eager and chomping at the bit to vote. They ran out and voted early, and on election day, they fell off a cliff. But they are still highly motivated, and they have 3 runoffs for Congress, all in Republican-held districts. They had 3 districts where 7 Democrats ran for Congress, 2 of them being strong Republican districts. So they are motivated on their side quite a bit, which is why we can't take anything for granted. We've got to fight in every nook and cranny. And as Jim said, our grassroots activism and all of our great precinct chairs and all the Republican women and everybody pulling together can make the difference and turn out a vote and win in November. I'm confident of it. So.
And Representative Murphy would like to add some comments about the...
Yeah, one of the things I noticed is the split between men and women in the Republican primary was right at 50-50, very close to the population. Democrats were 58-42 women. So we've got about 4 or 5% women of our Republican women, just even split, that ought to be voting Republican that are voting in the Democrat primaries. And so I just say, women, if y'all didn't think you were important, let me tell you, you're really important. And we've got to get that message out and bring those women over. They are the entire difference, Paul, of the Dem turnout versus the Republican turnout in Harris County. It's at 8%.
So really, so ladies are going to call the shots right now because Democratic turnout soared from 2014. It was up like about, it tripled. I mean, it doubled at least.
It did triple. It was still less than half of 2008. I want to point out.
But look how many voters were out for their very first primary. We should start singing. But there, no primary history. 54,000 Democrat voters, no primary history.
A lot of them, we've actually looked at those numbers, Jim, and a lot of Democrats did vote in their primary for the first time, but they were November voters. Out of the entire county, I think 2.8% were new voters. So it's a very small number of new voters. What they were doing was what we did in 2016, and again this year, is move a lot of November voters into the primary as well. So they weren't motivating new people to vote, but their base was turning out in these very hotly contested primaries.
So one thing I noticed from the data is, of course, I'm a journalist and I write politics a lot, so I seriously had like 100 conversations with individual voters in Harris County about, you know, their deliberations about the primary, I mean, people were thinking about like which primary they should vote in because it's an open primary. They were thinking about individual races. A lot of them were torn because they wanted to weigh in on multiple races. So like, for example, in HD 134, there were a lot of voters who wanted to vote in both the Republican State House primary and in the congressional primary, or the Democratic, and you know, they wanted to vote in the gubernatorial race. I mean, there was so many contests on both sides of the aisle that in Harris County there was really a sort of highly informed, highly engaged decision. And so, you know, of course, that's me. I'm a journalist, so I'm probably hearing from those voters more than most people would hear from them. Do you expect we'll see a lot of straight ticket voters, or the usual number of straight ticket voters in November?
We're going to do our best to encourage people not to vote Democrat straight ticket. I think what you're talking about, a lot of people voted in the primary for the first time on the Democrat side. I don't think they appreciate the horror of Nancy Pelosi being speaker again. And so that's one of the things we're going to make clear is how bad the Democrat rule would be, both the corruption and the incompetence that comes with Democrat rule. So we want to make sure folks understand they should not go vote Democrat. At the same time, how important it is, and we've exemplified in the response to Harvey, to have Republican leadership. And the easiest thing with 75 judicial races on the ballot will be to vote straight ticket. So I think we're going to be able to maintain our straight ticket, and that's going to always a huge emphasis of our campaign.
Well, okay, so let me think how to phrase this diplomatically. We've had some discussions. I've heard this themes emerging from all the speakers tonight. We have to unite to win, put aside the policy divisions we had during the primary. I'm not sure that every voter in the Republican primary is inclined to do that at this point. Some of them are really upset, angry, especially in the HD 134 primary, which I mentioned. I'm hearing people who felt it was personal, that it was overly personal, that it was outside interference by state officials. So, you know, I mean, is unite to win, or just come together and support the Republican nominee, forget about what you saw in the primary? Is that a message that's going to work on, or is there more you guys can do to sort of bind up some of these wounds?
I'll just reflect from my family I grew up in. Now I'm in this Republican family, but one of our biggest fights every year was what mass we should go to at Christmas. You know, do you do the midnight mass, the morning mass, and at the end of the day, we all went to mass together. It worked out. And, you know, we had some squabbles, we had some fights, not just here in Harris County, but I watched colleagues across the state deal with this. And I think people well understand those spirited contests get us in shape and ready to go compete for the fall. We're going to lose some people, but we gain people when those contests occur. It's a net gain.
And we share core principles that unite us all. And as the election gets closer and we see the effort by the National Democrat Party to come into Harris County, to flip District 7, to try to turn Harris County blue, that's going to unite us, because if they get District 7, you are going to have Speaker Pelosi. If they get District 7 and turn Harris County blue, that means Texas turns Democrat and will never elect another Republican president. And it's a Republican president and a Republican Congress and the leadership of Kevin Brady that gave us the largest tax cut in American history. Unemployment's the lowest. Employment is at the highest level it's ever been in the nation's history. African American and Hispanic unemployment's at the lowest it's ever been. We're going to have the United States military
John,
restored and rebuilt.
Those points you're making, and I got to say, they're exactly what we as Republicans need to talk about. We've cut the red tape of the EPA. We got business moving again. The world respects us again. People are making more money.
And these things unite us.
But between floods and fires and shootings and bombings and the internet and blogs, it's very hard to get people's attention. It's very hard. And that's where the grassroots are just so important. And I don't think ever more important in than today's fragmented media world than they are
We're going to
today.
be all working together at the state, county, and federal level to make sure that we get a record turnout in the November election to keep Harris County red.
1 minute.
Yeah, we're getting near the end.
Let me ask then 2 more questions. One.
Wrap up.
Okay. Does Trump win Texas in 2020?
What?
Does Trump win Texas in 2020?
Well, if he's on the ticket, absolutely, easily.
Are you sure?
That's easy. I think, one of the things I learned early on in politics was the old Morton Blackwell saying, remember, the other side has problems too. So, Erica, the day you published your article in the Chronicle last week, there was an article in the Fort Worth News talking about how the Democrat split is, and the national and state Democrats are so split, and they even intervened in Congressional District 7 against one of their own because they know their party is going further and further to the left. So we want to encourage that. I think that's going to happen. We're going to make it clear to the voters between now and November that there's a clear choice between the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, and Republican leadership is going to be the key to our future. And the last thing we want to do is elect Democrats. So we're going to elect Republicans all the way down the ballot in November. I'm confident.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. Thank you. Paul, thank you. Thank you very much.
Chris, it's fun.
I want to say thank you to the Harris County Republican Party for your tireless work every single election. And I also want to say thanks to House Majority Whip Steve Scalise for your tremendous leadership in Washington, D.C. You all need to understand the powerful role that Steve Scalise has played in ensuring that Houston and Texas had access to the billions of dollars that we need in order to rebuild Houston and rebuild Texas. Give it up for Steve Scalise. You all know as well as I do, this is an incredibly important election year for Texas. And as the largest county in our state, we are counting on Harris County once again to keep Texas red. It is you all in Harris County who help elect Republican leaders who keep Texas the premier state in the United States of America. Think about it. Our unemployment rate is at an all-time low. More Texans have jobs today than at any time in Texas history. And we remain the model for limited government, for low taxes, for reasonable regulations, and most importantly, for individual liberty. It's because of you, because you elected the right people, that we banned sanctuary city policies in Texas. It's because of you that we cracked down on human trafficking and we put together a team that helped arrest treacherous gang members like MS-13 and put them in jail. And we helped our children by reforming a broken foster care and child protective services system. But we know there's more that we must do. We must rein in your skyrocketing property taxes. We must reform school finance and put an end to the Robin Hood system that has failed our students. And we must help our veterans who fought for our freedom. Now, you all know that the Democrats are hostile to our agenda, and they are organizing to win across the state. We cannot let that happen. Now, let's be honest. In non-presidential election years, elections favor the party that's out of power, So now, with the primary election behind us, the Republican Party must come together and unite to work together to defeat the Democrats in November. We must redouble our efforts to get voters to the polls and elect principled leaders like Senator Ted Cruz, leaders like my good friend Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, as well as electing the entire Republican leaders of the Harris County House and Senate delegations. And we must ensure high Republican turnout in these critical judicial races right here in Harris County. So thanks again to the Harris County Republican Party for all that you do to fight for conservative values. Together, we will build a brighter future for our state, because in Texas, anything and everything is possible.
I need to readjust this microphone. Governor. Back down to my height. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce our next speaker and honored to introduce another champion, local champion who's made tremendous impact nationally, and that is our the House Ways and Means Committee Chair, Kevin Brady. Congressman Kevin Brady. Congressman Brady is only the third Texan, this is an interesting statistic, in 226 years to lead the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the House of Representatives. It is the first and oldest committee in Congress, and it shapes so much of our national policy through its power over taxes, trade, health care, welfare, Social Security, and Medicare. As chairman, we all know Congressman Brady led the effort last year in 2017 to deliver the first comprehensive reform of our tax system since the Reagan administration over 30 years ago. It was a tremendous accomplishment that led by Congressman Brady. You may not know, before his election to Congress, Kevin Brady was a Chamber of Commerce executive in Montgomery County. You're welcome to move to Harris County anytime, Congressman Brady. We'd be glad to have you. Of course, he does live in Montgomery County with his wife, Kathy, and his two sons, Will and Sean. And as I understand, he comes home every weekend to spend time with his son. So he's also a model father and husband, and just a great guy to lead our country and to lead the House Ways and Means Committee. So he's here to tell us about tax reform and anything else he wants to talk about, particularly the ways we can win in November. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our neighbor and Congressman Kevin Brady.
Paul, thank you for your leadership, and let me start off by thanking every one of you. You know, we're so blessed in Texas, we're so blessed in this region. We have remarkable public servants who lead in Republican and conservative ways to make our county and our state so much better, but not one of us would be here without you. So many of you as sponsors, as Governor knows, that we rely on to help us with the resources to win these races are Republican women who day in and day out are just the bulwark of Texas Republican, absolutely. Our precinct chairs and all those supporters, you make such a huge difference, and I'll tell you why. Let me thank you too, Chairman Simpson, Paul Simpson, for your leadership. Thank you for sending a remarkable delegation to Congress from the Houston region. You don't know how important, you don't know how effective these people are. Mike McCall, Chairman of Homeland Security, at a time, when our border system is so important. You look at John Culberson, leads one of the key appropriations subcommittee, delivered Hurricane Harvey relief unbelievably well. You have Pete Olson, who's on the influential Energy and Commerce Committee from a state that's got something to do with energy, ours. Then you've got Randy Weber, who's carving out a niche on big infrastructure issues. Brian Babin, who's a champion for NASA. And then you have Judge Ted Poe. A hero against human trafficking, who's led Republicans in areas we didn't always know we should lead in, and has done it with class and fortitude and in the Texas way, and that's just the way it is. All right, Judge? And I'll tell you, our region, I know this firsthand from tax reform, but our region is so blessed to have Ted Cruz as our senator. He played, I don't know that you know what a crucial role he played in tax reform. He's been involved in tax issues for years. And in fact, I stole, you're not going to tell anyone this, but his idea of bringing our tax system down to a simple, fair postcard was the one I thought was best for America. And in fact, in the new tax code next year, almost 9 out of 10 Americans will be able to file using a simple postcard-style system. Senator Cruz, thank you for your leadership on that. I want to thank my friend Steve Scalise. You don't know what a remarkable man he is. And if you've seen the devastation of the shooting, his courage afterwards, just relentless determination to recover now, recover yesterday. And he came back, I don't know how he did it, from that hospital bed, came back and jumped straight into tax reform, counted those noses and helped deliver the first tax reform in 31 years. And he's my friend. Steve, thank you for all your leadership. Governor Patrick's right. When Republicans unite, we can do remarkable things. When Republicans in Congress united with President Trump, we delivered a new tax code for America. Together, we delivered a new tax code for America. And look what it's already doing. Millions of Americans have higher paychecks, new bonuses, better health savings plans, better retirement plans. We have hundreds of companies who have announced new investments in America worth billions of dollars. 2 or 3 companies have already announced new jobs of over 20,000 new jobs here in America alone. It's remarkable. Companies that announced they were moving overseas have announced, no, they're going to stay in America now. They're going to stay in America now, and they're bringing their dollars to invest not in China, not in Europe, but here in the United States of America. Last month, 90% of Americans saw a bigger paycheck because Republicans united with this president to do it. And we're just getting started. Main Street optimism is at a 40-year high. Consumer confidence is at a 20-year high. Businesses are investing in ways that you just can't imagine. And Americans finally know what it's like to keep more of their hard-earned money. And the best is yet to come, because this tax code we designed is built for growth. It's designed to grow jobs and paychecks in the U.S. economy. It leapfrogged America from nearly dead last among our global competitors into the lead pack. It's one of the best places on the planet for that next new job, that next new plant, that next new headquarters. And so we've still got more work to do. The president and I are talking about tax reform phase 2, because we think we can do even more to make America the best place in the world for growth, and in a way that people's paychecks grow like they haven't seen in a decade or more. We also think that a new and simpler tax code demands a new and simpler IRS. So come April 17th, you're going to see some legislation on the House floor to bust up the IRS and redesign it into 21st century agency. And I'll finish with this, because we've got these wonderful speakers tonight, but the way we maximize America's economy, now that we have one of the most competitive tax codes in the world, we need more customers, that's free trade, and we need more workers. And let's just remind ourselves why the freedom to trade is so important to Republicans, why it's so important for our region. The freedom to trade is the greatest economic freedom we have. It is the freedom to buy and sell and compete anywhere in the world with as little interference from government as possible. It's the heart of our free enterprise system. It has propelled America to the greatest country on earth. It has the power. The freedom to trade has the ability to raise families out of poverty, regions out of poverty, whole countries out of poverty. And what I love most about this freedom is it answers a question. Who has the power? Who has the power to decide what products you can buy and at what price? The question is it government? Is it Washington that has that power? Is it special interest that has that power? The freedom to trade says that power lies with you, the American consumers. And let me tell you, when American workers have the freedom to buy and sell and compete around the world, we win. And when we turn countries from one-way trade selling into America to two-way trade selling backwards, we grow jobs like no one can believe. And guess what the biggest growth trade region in America is? It's right here in Houston, Texas. So we're going to keep fighting for those values, keep working with this president. He's holding China accountable. He's holding trading partners accountable. And I'm convinced, having just taken a bipartisan delegation down to Mexico City for the NAFTA 7th round, I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged about the progress we made. I believe we're going to deliver a modern NAFTA for America in 2018. God bless you. Thank you for all that you do.
Hi, I'm Texas Senator John Cornyn. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you this evening, but I know you're in good hands with my friend Steve Scalise and Chairman Paul Simpson, as well as members of the Texas delegation. 2017 was a good year for the Republican Party. We swore in a new Republican president, reformed our broken tax code, repealed Obamacare's individual mandate, and rolled back regulations that stifled Texas businesses. We confirmed a Supreme Court justice and a record number of appellate judges, including Don Willett and Jim Ho here in Texas. And we delivered disaster relief to help Houston and the rest of Texas begin to rebuild in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. Texans showed the world tremendous grit and humanity in the aftermath of the hurricane, and it's an inspiration for all of us who continue our fight to help our state. So we can't stop there. Ted and I have the chance to do even more in the Senate in 2018. I hope you'll join me in encouraging everyone to knock on doors, spread the word on social media, and support conservatives up and down the ballot. Texas has the first primary in the nation on March the 6th. All eyes will be on us, and we Texans lead by example. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you. You know, Harris County is where it all started for me back in 2005 and 2006 to run for the Senate. And the reason I'm standing here tonight is because of this county also was there for me when we ran for lieutenant governor, and there for me once again several weeks ago on election night. So thank you very much. A couple of notes to make. First of all, you know, Congress had this vote today on the budget, and it was unsure when they would vote. So Paul Simpson texted me late last night and again early this morning and said, Dan, it's possible that Congressman Scalise and the other congressmen will not be here tonight because of the vote. And will you be keynote speaker if they cannot attend? And I said, be honored to. And he said, and if they can attend, are you okay? I said, of course, I'll be flexible, whatever you need. I've been known to be able to talk for 20 or 30 minutes off the cuff. But I must tell you that this is the first time ever a group of men and women got together to stop me from talking. I've never had $1.3 trillion spent to shut me up. That was a lot of money. But we're honored to have Congressman Scalise tonight. I want to talk about two things quickly. First of all, I want to talk about that video and the storm. It was the most amazing time in our state, in our country, in the world. They were watching how we responded. And if you think back just to last August, what this state has been through, the largest natural disaster in the history of the country, followed by the largest mass murder in Texas, followed by, in the last 3 weeks, the bombings in Austin. And as Ken Paxton said, our great Attorney General, law enforcement did incredible work. But it's the people of Texas, they did incredible work. But it's the people of Texas that have stood strong through all of that. You know, in that video, when I went out with the P3 Army truck, we went to a neighborhood off Telge Road that almost everyone had left, totally underwater, 3-4 feet, almost every house. But we heard there were a few people that were still there. So we went back to find them. We heard there was the cat lady. She had 40 cats and wouldn't leave. So we pulled up to her house, and she had one house that was not flooded, but water was all around. And she came wading out in the water, and I was sitting in the front of the truck. She didn't know I was on the truck, wouldn't even know if she knew who I was. And I opened the door, and she said, without batting an eye, "Governor, if I had known you were coming, I would have had dinner ready." Turned out she was a cat rescue lady, and she wasn't about to let her cats drown. I never met an angry person during this time. I met people who were hurt. A 90-year-old man in west side of town, out near Eldridge and Memorial, he said, "Dan, my whole life is on the curb. I'm 90 years old. I've lost everything." I've met people who lost loved ones in the storm. And then we went to Sutherland Springs, and I didn't know what to expect. I was there within 48 hours of the shooting, and what I had not thought through, quite frankly, when I went to the hospital to visit some of the wounded victims, was that most of them didn't know what had happened. They were in ICU, they'd been in surgery, and the hospital turned off all the televisions in their room so when they awoke that they wouldn't see the news coverage. And I went into the room of a lady who had been wounded 3 times. She was a grandmother. Her husband was killed, and her granddaughter was in ICU above her. And her spirit was so strong. And she said, "Dan, tonight I lost my husband and almost all of our friends who we go to church with. But Rafael Cruz, they went to heaven together to meet Jesus." The faith of people was so strong. And you know, the Bible says, you know, God will always give you the words and the opportunity. And so I walked down to another room to meet another lady, and I knelt down next to her bed, and she looked at me, and I was the first person she had talked to outside of a hospital staff or a doctor, and she said, "Governor, were they all killed?" I wasn't prepared for that. She didn't know. And I said, "Ma'am, remembering what the words God had given me up the hall through a lady who had been shot, lost her husband," I said, "No, ma'am, they were not all killed, but many of your friends went to heaven together tonight to meet Jesus." The incredible spirit, the incredible spirit. Judge Emmett said on the tape, he was referring to all these volunteers that helped. And quite frankly, the church community probably sent out 80 to 90% of all the people who were out there mucking homes, like Senator Larry Taylor, Senator Paul Betancourt are here tonight. The church stepped up, and the government did their part. President Trump was here multiple times with Governor Abbott, myself, whatever we needed. FEMA did the very best they could under difficult situations. The county elected officials, the city elected officials, the first responders. Do you know how many policemen and firemen were out helping others whose their own homes had been flooded? A remarkable time. So we're always proud of Texas, but we should all be so proud of who we are as a people, because when another Texan gets in trouble, no one does ask, as I said in the video, "Oh, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Did you support this bill or that bill? Are you a conservative or a liberal?" We just look at them as a fellow Texan and we say, what do we need to do to help you? And so, being Lieutenant Governor of this state, it's always been a blessing. But I have learned so much and seen so much that it's just an incredible time. Charles Dickens said in A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times and the worst of times. It was the worst of times for many, and we still have a long way to recovery. But it was also the best of times for us all. Now, I'll close with the second thing I want to talk about. As I said, during the storm and a crisis, no one worries about what party you represent or who you are, what your politics are, but elections matter.
Elections matter. You've heard about the blue wave. And they did increase their turnout somewhat. We still outvoted them by 500,000 votes. I believe that in a non-presidential year, we had the highest Republican turnout in the history of the state, about almost 250,000 more votes in the primary than 4 years ago, when we had a lot of very high-profile races, lieutenant governor, all the way down the ballot. So if they have a blue wave, we just need a bigger surfboard. And I'm counting on Harris County to ride that wave. Governor Abbott and I won Harris County by 5 points the last election. I believe the most any Republican has carried the county statewide. And we need to repeat that. We need to keep all of our local elected officials, our congressmen, our House representatives, our senators. But we cannot do that unless we stand together. A House divided against itself cannot stand. So whatever policy issues you have with someone else in our party, put it aside. Whatever primary candidate you had that didn't win or did win, put it aside. It's not the time between now and November to argue amongst ourselves. This is the time to unite. If people on the rooftop didn't care who was in the boat, and if people on the boat didn't care who was on the rooftop, then one Republican looking at another Republican should not be arguing with them now. We need Harris County to have the biggest turnout we've ever had. We need Harris County to come together and lead the way in this election like we led the way in Harvey. I'm blessed to serve. Thank you, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our keynote speaker is one of our own, and one of our favorites here in Harris County is, of course, Congressman Ted Poe. Affectionately known to many of us, of course, as Judge Poe. He's been in elected office. Wait, I'm not ready yet. They like you. I have a long introduction here, Congressman, but I don't think we need it, so come on up. I'm sure you all know Congressman Poe is ending over 35 years, I believe it is, public service, of course, as a prosecutor, as a judge for many years, and 14 years as an outstanding congressman from the 2nd Congressional District. He's decided to not to run again for re-election. So we'll be losing him. So as a tribute to you and a thanks for all you've done for Harris County, we've got a small present. Now, we were told you have enough plaques. So it's not a plaque, it's a tie. You may still have reason to wear it going forward. So, Congressman, with our thanks and appreciation for all you've done, I would present you this tie as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Get in here?
It's in. It's down. You want to pull it out, or you got to pull the paper out? It's a little metal thing. He may need some help here, so.
Texas tie.
Well, sort of.
There we go.
Let's
Texas
get
tie.
flags. All right.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's always good to get back to Texas, get out of the Devil City, and come back and see normal people. In case you ever wondered what DC stands for, it stands for Devil City. This is a great opportunity for me for a lot of reasons, and as Paul said, I am, at the end of this year, I'll be retiring from Congress. I grew up here in Harris County, in Spring Branch. Nancy Palm, when I was in law school, told me that I needed to be a precinct chairman, and so I became a precinct chairman, went to law school here, and spent some time in the Air Force, taught school, was a prosecutor, judge for a long time, when the defense bar learned that I was coming back to Houston, they're all worried that I'm going to go back down to the courthouse and take care of their clients. But and spending 14 years in the House of Representatives. Let me tell you something. You need to know that the 25 Republican members of Congress from Texas are a force to be reckoned with. We are the largest delegation of Republicans in all of the House of Representatives. We are Texan to the bone. We're hard-headed, independent, and we believe in something that, frankly, not everybody believes in, and it's freedom. And we will fight for that every day. We break bread together on Thursdays. The Texas delegation, Republicans, meet together. On Wednesday nights, we ship in Bluebell ice cream for our lunch on Thursday. And we sit together in the House. You've seen the House of Representatives. There's no assigned seats, but we sit together. And you better be from Texas or know how to talk to sit on our row, or you are invited to sit somewhere else. And so, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact we've got several here, but all 25 are fighting for freedom and fighting for Texan. And I am proud of that, and you should be proud of that too, because it wasn't too many years ago, there weren't any Republicans from Texas in Congress. And now we got 25, and there's going to be more when we get redistricted. So I think you should always appreciate our Texas delegation. It's been a long evening, and I've heard some talk about, man, there's sure a lot of speakers. It wasn't too long ago, you could get all the Republicans in Harris County up here on stage, and that would be it. When I was nominated or appointed judge in 1981, there weren't any Republican judges in Harris County. And I was appointed, and I ran in 82, spent 22 years on the bench. And because of the Republicans here, you changed the courthouse. And the Democrats lost control of the down ballot races. But years ago, there just weren't any Republicans. I did a parade when I represented Jefferson County as a member of Congress. I did a parade. I was in the parade. I was the last person in the parade. Jefferson County is a kind of a stronghold of Democrat establishment. And I was the last person, and I was in my Jeep, and this woman walks out to my Jeep and says, "Are you a Republican?" And I said, "I am a Republican." And she said, "I have never seen a Republican before." And she meant it. Times have changed. And now they're seeing a lot of Republicans. And you saw a lot up here tonight, and that's a good thing that we have. But I have truly enjoyed public service and serving Texas. There's no greater honor for a person who's an elected official in Texas to represent Texas. We're different than the other 49 states. Our history's different. This time of year, I always think about the time when we were fighting for independence. It was in between the defeat at the Alamo and the victory at San Jacinto, March 6th to April 21st. And Texans at that time, they were afraid, they were scared, and they were what was called the runaway scrape. They were leaving their homes because the enemy was coming. The dictator who had abolished the Constitution of Mexico was coming to take Texas, destroy freedom. And of course, the runaway scrape, that was when people were headed to Louisiana. And Victory occurred on April the 21st, defeated the enemy. Texas became a republic. Don't you like the sound of that word? Republic. Independence. For 9 years. So our history is different. You know, we only got into the United States Union by one vote. And Steve, that was because a Louisiana senator changed his vote from no to yes, and Texas became the next state in the United States. Some wish the vote had gone the other way, but anyway, we became a part of the United States. So I want to thank all of you, from the precinct chairman to the women's clubs, for all you've done for me personally over the last so many years since 1981. About a year ago, the Democrats and the Republicans always play a baseball game at the National Stadium and raise a lot of money for charities in the D.C. area. They sell out the stadium. Republicans versus the Democrats. Now, I've never played in that game. The Republicans won't let me play on their team because I'm so bad. In fact, Steve insists that I pitch for the Democrat team when we play next year. But anyway, so they practice, and the Republicans were practicing one morning as they were doing ready for the play against the Democrats. A person comes up to the field, to one of the dugouts, and asks a Republican, Jeff Duncan from South Carolina, ask him, are these the Republicans or the Democrats? And Jeff said, we're Republicans. The individual leaves, goes to his van, grabs a lot of weapons, comes back to the field, and fires about 50 rounds from his weapons. Steve Scalise was the first person hit. He was playing shortstop. He was shot. A total of 4 people were injured that day. And he had a bad wound. Went in one side, lodged in his body. The individual kept shooting. Because there was a security detail, Steve and other members of the leadership have a security detail, Capitol police officers. Those 2 police officers armed, and they started chasing the outlaw. And they took him down. They didn't have on bulletproof vests. They were both wounded, but they took him down and they killed him. And we thank the Capitol police officers for doing that. We're thankful they were there that day. They didn't necessarily have to be there. If Steve hadn't have been there, we wouldn't have had it. There wouldn't have been a detail there. But the person, and I want to make this clear, he was looking for Republicans. National media won't talk about it, but he was looking for the Republicans where they were practicing. And so Steve was shot. The outlaw was killed. Steve goes to the hospital, and the doctor says, critical condition. And you know what that means. That means it's tough. It's rough. Critical condition. And Steve spent a lot of time in the hospital. People started praying for him. You prayed for him. People all over the country were praying for Steve. And he eventually recovered from the wounds. Surprised a lot of folks. And he came to the House floor in September and spoke on the House floor. Now, some of you may watch C-SPAN. You have no life if you watch C-SPAN. I've been on C-SPAN a few times, and you know what happens when people speak. You see the speaker, and then you look around, and there are not a whole lot of people on the floor listening to the speaker. That's when I speak. But Steve came, and every member of Congress was there. The gallery was packed with people. And Steve spoke, and I am telling you, as an observer and a member of Congress, that was the most powerful speech about our country and freedom and what he went through of any speech I have ever heard on the House floor. So look it up. It's worth taking the time to see what he had to say. But he made one comment that's in the essence of his speech. He said that it was more than an attack on him, but it was an attack on the institution. He's right. That person out there on that baseball field that day, he was attacking our country. He was attacking everything that's good and right about freedom and democracy. And that person was not successful in defeating Steve or freedom and democracy. And he took a bullet, Steve took a bullet, just like our men and women overseas take a bullet for our country. And his attitude is so remarkable. To me, it's remarkable. Not just then, but now. Positive attitude. He's the whip. What does that mean? He's the guy that tries to get all of us Republicans, we're all independent. Republicans are independent. Democrats they're all a bunch of sheep. Nancy Pelosi barks and they start running. But anyway, he has to round us up and tell us about legislation that he knows everything about and convince us to play on the team and move the country back to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. He's the whip, and he does a great job of doing that. Just a couple other things. He's one thing you may not know about him. He lives with Kevin Brady and 2 other members of Congress when he's not back in Louisiana and when Kevin's not here. They live in a townhome, and that's all I'll say about that, because when I'm up in Washington during the week, I live in a townhome with members of Congress as well, 4 members of Congress as well. Paul Ryan used to be one of them, but he couldn't take it and he left. But Steve has earned the respect of the Democrats. You always hear about us fussing and fighting and feuding and all of that stuff. The Democrats respect Steve because they know where he stands. They know exactly where he stands and has great respect among all of those. He's from Louisiana. Like I tell him, that's okay. You vote in our elections and we vote in your elections. We're kind of cousins, being from Louisiana. He's married to his wife, Jennifer. He has got an obnoxious support for LSU. And see, he used to be across the hall from me. And so during Mardi Gras and during that time when LSU was winning all those football games, it was just awful. All that purple and gold and green and Mardi Gras and all of that, but he believes in his state, which is great. He's married to his wife, Jennifer, 2 kids. One other thing I would like to say about that, Carol and I have been overseas with Steve. He doesn't just represent Congress well. He represents our country well. And when we were in Israel together, he was quite impressive on letting people know in Israel where the United States stands with Israel. So he represents us abroad as well as he represents us here. And let me just finish with this. If Steve would have been around during 1776, he would have been one of those 54 signers of the Declaration of Independence. That's what he believes in. He is a leader among leaders. He's a statesman for all the states, and he is an absolute friend of freedom. And that's just the way it is. Thank you very much. Steve Scalise, help me welcome him.
you for being here. Thanks, Steve.
Wow. Boy, are we going to miss Ted Poe. I love you, brother. And that's just the way it is. What an introduction. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, thank y'all so much. Really appreciate the invitation. This is something that Kevin Brady had started talking to me about a while back. And, you know, just knowing the size of Harris County, knowing how much y'all have helped us to provide 25 members of Congress from the great state of Texas. But look, just to see what kind of event you have. I've got great Republican clubs in my district. We've got men's clubs, women's clubs, the party does events, and we have parishes, not counties in Louisiana. Y'all do it wrong, everybody else does it wrong. So Jefferson Parish is where I'm from. It's the largest parish, largest group of Republicans. They say everything's bigger in the state of Texas, and you're right. There are a lot more people in this room than any of ours because y'all have so many people, but I truly appreciate what y'all do for our party because it is the grassroots of the Republican Party that has brought us back into the majority of the House, into the majority of the Senate, and gotten us the White House. And when I look back here at what tonight's all about, a Lincoln-Reagan dinner, you just think about that. You start off with Abraham Lincoln, the father of our party, the first Republican president. You want to talk about sacrifice. Ted gave his life to end slavery. One of the biggest unanswered questions of the Constitution. Our founding fathers knew it had to get resolved, and they just couldn't put the Union together and resolve it at the same time, and so they left it for somebody else. And Abraham Lincoln said, I'm going to resolve this in the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which was led by Republicans to change the Constitution, to end slavery and give freedom to everybody and fulfill that mission that we are a nation where everybody has freedom. And I have a room in my office. As the majority whip, I get this unbelievable suite of offices in the United States Capitol. It's truly a treat. Any of you that come to the Capitol, please come visit. I love to show it off. But I've got a room that Abraham Lincoln used to hang out in. It is a room like 10 steps off of the old House chamber. And when the Congress met in the 1800s, size of the country was a lot smaller. The size of Congress was a lot smaller. It literally would change every 10 years with the census, you know, and it'd be in the 180s, and then it would be in the 190s, and then it was in the 200s. Finally, it got in like the 300s, and they said, you know, we're going to run out of room in this place. We have to build a bigger House chamber, and we're going to cap it at 435. But back then, in 1847, there was a one-term member of Congress. Abraham Lincoln got elected to serve one term in Congress. He was truly a backbencher because they sat in seniority. So he sat 10 steps from the door to one of my offices. And it used to be the cloakroom of the House of Representatives in the 1800s. And then it just became storage, and it was just where they put some staff. And then I become whip, and they're showing this to me, and they're, you know, you see a couple of cubicles and desks, okay, some staff maybe here, and they said, oh yeah, and that's the place where Abraham Lincoln used to sit. I said, whoa, hold on a second. How can you have this kind of history and not share it with everybody? And so there's a fireplace where Abraham Lincoln used to sit, so we made that like a little shrine to Abe, and I asked the architect of the Capitol, who runs the Capitol, I said, can I just call this the Lincoln Room? He said, you can call it whatever you want. So now the Lincoln Room is a room that every member can use. We have receptions. We have, I had some Cajun chefs from Louisiana come and cook. You want to talk about a fun night. We are really proud of what we do in Louisiana, but we have got great food. We love sharing it with everybody. Y'all can all come down. One of our great restaurateurs is Tommy Satanovich, who's a dear friend of mine. You want to go, one of the world's delicacies is charbroiled oysters from Drago's restaurant. He invented charbroiled oysters, and so go try them out. I said, you know, how much fun would that have been, like when you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with these oysters? And I'm going to throw garlic butter on top on an open flame and throw a little Parmesan cheese on there. And, you know, I'd have been experimenting for weeks and weeks before I let anybody else know about it. But we have that great room, the Lincoln Room. And then you look at Ronald Reagan. I was a student at LSU. Kevin Brady told me I had to limit the amount of times I said LSU when I speak. I think he said the over-under was 3, and I'm going to blow it away real quickly. But when I was a student at LSU, I didn't like the direction that the state was run. Louisiana was not run in a direction. I thought we were losing jobs to states like Texas. Y'all probably like the way our state was run. Imagine it was run by all Democrats. Every single state office was run by Democrats. The House, Senate was Democrat. There was never thought. Louisiana's a Democrat state. And Ronald Reagan was president. And when I became 18 and registered to vote, there was absolutely no doubt what party I aligned with, because Ronald Reagan truly inspired those conservative ideals that make our country so great. He said, not those pale pastels, but the bold colors of what the Republican Party stands for. And so the fact that you're paying tribute to both of them tonight and inviting me to be a part of this, I truly appreciate. Because if you look at where we are as a country, I think it's a real exciting time. I'm excited about the direction that we're headed right now. I love working with this president. I want to talk a little bit about him as a person as I've gotten to know him. But I wanted to talk a little bit about faith because, you know, June 14th of last year, we had that baseball practice the day before the game. You know, just 1 year prior to last year's game, I had finally beaten Kevin Brady out of the starting job. He was the starting second baseman for like 20 years. And I thought, there's no chance I'm going to ever be able to beat him. And finally, I win the starting gig. And then a year later, I'm named the starter. The day before the shooting, I'm named the starter. And then I can't play in the game. I mean, geez, Kev, give me a break. So we're practicing for this game. And it literally raises about $400,000 or $500,000 a year for charities in the D.C. area. We get to play at the Washington National Ballpark, so it's really cool. Play in a major league ballpark. And then the shooting starts. And I remember it was just, you know, you're just playing baseball, and next thing you know, you just hear something. I looked over to where the shots were coming from. I never saw the shooter. I saw a tractor. So I'm thinking maybe a tractor backfired or something. And then the next shot comes, the next shot, boom, and I'm hit. And I go down. And first thing I did is started crawling away. And I mean, there's shots. He's just rapid fired, a semi-automatic. And I gave out. The arm, you know, my arms gave out, my legs gave out. And first thing I did is said, okay, there's nothing else I can do. I'm just going to pray. And I started praying to God. And I will tell you, and I mean, there's gunfire going off. I can hear then a different caliber of gunfire engaging, which told me that my security detail that were there, that were with me that day, David Bailey and Crystal Griner, I knew that they were then engaging the shooter because I could just hear a different caliber of bullet. And as all this is going on, I just had this unbelievable calm and ease about me because I put it in God's hands. And I'm a man of faith. I don't walk around talking about it a lot. But I truly do believe in God, and I believe He's got a plan, and I believe He takes care of us. And, you know, whenever it's time, it's going to be time. But I surely hope that it wasn't my time that day. And I've got two kids, as Ted said. I have a now 11-year-old. Maddie just turned 11 last week. 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, Harrison. And the first image that came into my head was Maddie's daddy's little girl. I said, God, please don't let Madison have to walk up the aisle alone. It's just the first thing that came to me. And I said a few other prayers to him, some personal prayers. I prayed that David and Crystal would be successful in carrying out their duty. And God answered all those prayers. I mean, truly did come down. And there were miracles that happened that day. It wasn't just me. There were a number of other things that happened on that field that we've gone back and kind of gone over and tried to recreate in our heads that you just can't explain. And I wanted to share it with my colleagues. I wanted to share it with others that wanted to hear it. And I was amazed at how many other people wanted to hear that story. Because, you know, for decades now, we've seen God just pushed out of so many forms of government. And it's really ironic because our nation was a nation founded under a deep belief in God. It was not a country that was agnostic. It was not a country that said that we don't know where these powers come from. Our founding fathers said our powers and our rights don't come to us from lawmakers. They come to us from God through our lawmakers. And they wrote about it. And now today, when, you know, in Tangible Hope Parish in my district, the school board cannot say a prayer before they open up because the ACLU's gone in and they go in all across the country and they bully local governments and try to bankrupt them and say, sign a deal that you won't say a prayer. Now, you know, they tried to do that to us in the House of Representatives. Can you imagine going before Ted Poe and saying, you're not going to be able to say a prayer anymore? Can you imagine if you had to go before him as a criminal when he was a judge? My goodness. Wow, Ted Poe, like, oh, geez, you're done. You're done. But they literally sued us and said, you can't open with prayer. We have a House chaplain. And we took them to court. We went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won because we didn't back down. We weren't going to allow them to bully us. And we were able to win that case. And we still say a prayer when we open up every session. In fact, when you watch a State of the Union, it's amazing how the TV cameras rarely show it. Right behind the president. Now, right behind the president, it's Donald Trump as president. And you've got Mike Pence sitting there and Paul Ryan sitting there. Imagine when it was Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. We had to go through Culberson, Brady, Poe, and I had to go through 2 years of that. My God. So they've got this massive United States flag, but above the flag is our nation's motto, in God we trust. It's inscribed right up there in the House chamber. And in fact, when you go into the House chamber, if you go in as a guest, it's just, again, all of it. We get to work in a living history museum. It's really amazing to think about the history of our country and how great it is that we get to serve as members of Congress and represent over 750,000 people and be a part of the great history of this nation. But when you're in the House chamber, all around the wall, they have lawmakers throughout the history of the world, and they're all profiles. Caesar, Socrates. There's only one inscription of a lawmaker that's a full bust. Do you know who it is? Moses, the ultimate lawmaker, the Ten Commandments. Moses is the only one up there. This is in the House of Representatives chamber. We are not a nation where we don't have, where this wall, this fake wall they talk about, a separation of church and state. We don't have a national religion. Of course not. We love all religions. We love people of all faiths. But we are a nation founded under a deep belief in God, and never forget about that. And so I had the opportunity to feel God's presence at a time when I really needed it. I go to the hospital, and let me tell you another one. We call it, Jennifer and I went through a lot of this. We call them little miracles. So Brad Wenstrup, congressman from Ohio, happened to be a doctor and a combat surgeon in Iraq. He's playing in the outfield. He represents parts of Cincinnati. So the shooting happens, and he goes kind of past the batting cage down the first baseline. So he can see the shooter. He can see my security detail. He can see me. The shooter can't see him. And the whole time he said he's watching the shooter to see if he goes down, and then he's watching me to see if I've got any signs of life. And he said he could see my leg moving and my arm moving. As soon as the shooter goes down, he beelines out to me, and I mean, I'm just bleeding out. And he applies a tourniquet. And he looks for where the bullet went in. He saw that the bullet didn't go out. He didn't tell me this then, but he told me later. He said, I had the exact same injury to a really good friend of mine in Iraq. He said, the bullet went in, same area, didn't go out. He said, he bled out. And he said the whole time he's thinking this, so he applied the tourniquet. I get to the hospital with 0 blood pressure. Now, there's some doctors here. You know what 0 blood pressure means. I should not be standing up here, but through God's grace. My doctor, my trauma surgeon, probably about a month after I was through probably the first 8 surgeries, and I was finally getting out of ICU and going to a regular recovery room, I asked my doctor, I said, how bad was it? And he said, Steve, he said, the first night there were at least 2 times where it really should have gone the other way. But he said, if that tourniquet wasn't applied the way it was, you would never have made it here. And so Brad Wenstrup's one of my heroes. Brad Wenstrup helped save my life. The fact that he was out there on the field that day is no accident. When they finally got me, and I could hear everything. I was very cognizant of what was going on. It was again, one of these surreal things. And then finally they put me on a gurney and load me up into an ambulance. And at the time, they're taking me to George Washington Hospital. George Washington in D.C., that's where Reagan was taken after he was shot over at the Washington Hilton, which is near the Washington Hilton. We were very far from George Washington. They didn't have a helipad. So they're driving me there. Well, it's 7:30 in the morning in Northern Virginia. I mean, we are literally sitting in traffic with the lights going off, and there's no chance I make it. No chance. All of a sudden, the EMT in the ambulance sees a helicopter coming. And I don't know what made him do this, but he told the driver, he said, turn around, I think that's going to be for Scalise. Went back to the ball field. Sure enough, it was a Department of Interior Park Service helicopter, lands on the baseball field. They switch me over. 4 minutes later, I'm in the emergency room at MedStar Hospital. and they saved my life. You go explain that. You can't explain it. So we get through, and let me tell you, the night of the shooting, my wife comes and she's distraught. She's trying to figure out where she's going to keep the kids because she doesn't want the kids to know exactly what's going on. And President Trump showed up at the hospital with Melania, and just was wonderful at consoling my wife in an incredibly tough time. Throughout my recovery, I'd be in the hospital room and just randomly get a phone call, and it would be President Trump just checking in on me. This is a side of this great man that the media will never show you, but that's the kind of person that he is. In fact, one night, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and my phone rings. This is like a month and a half after I was through my surgeries, and I'm still in the hospital room. And a call comes in, and it's one of these unlisted numbers. So Jennifer's got my phone. She wouldn't let me have my phone for like the first 5 weeks. I don't know why. So the call comes in, and it's one of these unlisted numbers. She goes, oh, it must be a telemarketer. I said, Jennifer, when I get a call from the speaker or somebody, it's usually one of those. Why don't you just take it, see what it is, and take a message? She answers the phone. This is the White House. Will you hold for the president? She hands me the phone. She said, take the phone. And it was President Trump just checking in. And we talked about a lot of things. We talked about a lot of personal things. But we inevitably would talk about what's getting ready to happen in Congress. And tax reform was teed up. We were getting ready to do a budget just a few weeks as we're getting kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I was 3.5 months in the hospital. And, the first month, you're just fighting for your life. The second month, you're going from eating Jell-O, which was a big deal when you could eat Jell-O, to finally being able to eat real foods. And then Tommy shows up cooking charbroiled oysters and gumbo. And, it was like all kind of unbelievable dishes. He brought duck. He brought... The people at the hospital, my doctors, my nurses, I could get anything I wanted because they were like, gee whiz, this guy's bringing food I've never seen before. And so, I don't even know where that even goes. But it was just one of these tough times to start then seeing the kind of prayers that people were giving all across the country. All of you that have prayed for me, I cannot thank you enough, because whether you knew me or didn't know me, I felt the prayers that were coming towards me to lift me up and keep me going. And for people that don't believe in the power of prayer, wow, it is real. It's real, and I felt it, and it was incredibly heartwarming, not only from my friends back home, and we had church groups that were going and prayer groups all around, but I'd have colleagues of mine saying, I'm at the grocery store, and somebody came up and just asked how I was doing and said they're praying for me. And it just means an incredible amount. So the power of prayer, I can't tell you how important that is. But then throughout that, you want to get out. You just want to escape. Like there's a door right there. It's not like you're in a prison. You can leave. And I kept saying, when can I get out of here? And I had finally been given a discharge date. And so I had my staff coming in, give me briefings on what was coming up, and we're talking about we need to pass a budget because you can't do tax reform if you don't pass the budget, because tax reform with 60 votes in the Senate is going to look a whole lot different than what tax reform with only 51 votes in the Senate looks like. And Ted Cruz touched on a little bit there. My good friend John Cornyn, who is my counterpart, the Republican whip in the Senate, who does a great job. He and I work very closely together. And so we knew what we need. We had to get a budget done, and a budget's always tough to pass. But I was able to start working in the hospital with Diane Black, our chair of the Budget Committee, and we started putting together a budget. And then Kevin and I, we roomed together. We're not going to tell you a lot of those stories, but I'll tell you, I know when he was up here, if you listened to him, it really told you a lot about Kevin Brady, because he was talking about how great everybody else is and what great work that so many other people do. The work that he did to get this bill passed through Congress for the first time since 1986. There's a reason tax reform hasn't been done in over 30 years, because it's tough to do. And in many times, people have tried to do it, and they've failed to do it. Paul Ryan was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. He wanted to do tax reform, couldn't get it done. But Kevin Brady got it done. And Kevin Brady, when you look at what that bill has done to transform our economy, it would not have happened without Kevin Brady. And I got to work with him then not as a roommate, and we are dear friends. We've
been friends since it's almost 10 years now that we've been rooming together, and our families know each other. We actually care about each other a lot. And, you know, we've had all these geeky policy conversations in our townhouse. It's really bad. We got John Shimkus, who's on Energy and Commerce. I'm on Energy and Commerce. We've got Eric Paulson and Kevin, who are on Ways and Means Committee. And then I become the whip, and then he becomes the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And let me tell you, during that whole period of tax reform, it was right after I came back, I got to jump right into it. It actually invigorated me a lot to work on that because I knew what that meant for our country. And it's one of the reasons you run for a seat in Congress. You don't run there to have some fancy title. You run there because you want to make this a better country, to pass on the American dream that was in jeopardy. Look, the three of your Texas colleagues that are here tonight, myself, we all had to serve under all 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency. You know, and 2 years of those were when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, and they had supermajorities in the House and Senate. And just in that 2-year period, you saw what they did to wreck our economy. Regulations coming down. You're a business owner. Every day you're waking up going, my God, I can compete against the guy down the street or even the guy in a foreign country, but I can't survive with all the crazy regulations coming out of Washington trying to bankrupt my industry. And they did that to every industry. It was the oil industry one day, and then the evil insurance companies. Barack Obama could not give a speech without a boogeyman, and the boogeyman was usually an American industry that was doing great. And he was trying to cripple our economy, and he did for 8 years. But after those first 2 years, you saw a Republican Congress ushered in. And we passed a lot of great bills out of the House, by the way. Not one of them saw the light of day in the Senate, and none of them got to Barack Obama's desk. But we knew if we kept going out there and showing the country what an alternative looked like, then when we had a chance with an open presidency, and look at, there couldn't have been a better contrast. You had Hillary Clinton as the Democrat nominee. And I mean, it was a bruising Republican primary. Y'all talked a lot about your primaries. We have tough primaries too, rough and tumble politics. But you've got to come together, because we could have easily stayed fractured after that Republican primary. Now, they rigged it for the Democrats. I mean, Bernie Sanders probably won the Democrat primary. A socialist. He's not even a registered Democrat. And he probably won the Democrat primary, but they gave it to Hillary, so he was set for Hillary. On our side, we battled it out until the last weeks. But you know what? Donald Trump had a consistent message. Donald Trump talked about doing really specific things for this country. And one of those things that happened, I thought that was transformative, was that when Antonin Scalia, who was one of the great minds in the history of the Supreme Court, when he passed away, they didn't fill the seat for over a year. Took criticism for it, but didn't fill the seat. I think that was one of the most important decisions at helping elect Donald Trump, because then it really showed the swing voters. Probably everybody in this room then knew what they had to do. When it was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, you knew what you had to do. You knew what direction the country was going to go in. But to the swing voters, that I think really was the final piece that said the direction of the court is going to change based on this. Now, Donald Trump did something revolutionary. He was even criticized for it, but he said, I'm going to put out a list of who is going to be on the court if I get elected president. People said, nobody's ever done that before. He listed names. Hillary Clinton didn't have to do it. There was not one debate where they asked Hillary Clinton, who are your people going to be? You know why? Because you knew. Everybody in this room knew who Hillary Clinton would appoint. You know, you can basically take the philosophy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and subtract 30 or 40 years, and that's who it was going to be. There was never a doubt. And so when Donald Trump becomes president, within weeks, he announces it's going to be Neil Gorsuch, arguably the best person on the list that he put out. And now Gorsuch is on the Supreme Court. He said he was going to rein in federal regulations to try to bring sanity back so we can restore our manufacturing base in this country. And literally on his first day in office, he started signing executive orders to undo all of these radical Obama executive orders that were destroying our economy. And so when you work with him, and again, we started working real closely. So Brady and I started having these meetings with members. It took 2 months from when we started talking about tax reform, and Kevin Brady said, let's get together and start inviting members that aren't even on the Ways and Means Committee to come and give their ideas. And it was amazing. I mean, we'd have meetings where dozens of members would show up, where you might only have 3 or 4 on a normal issue. You would have dozens of members showing up time and time again, and for 2 months, he accumulated ideas from all around. He went to small businesses and said, what do you need to do to be able to compete? What do we need to do to be able to bring manufacturing back to America? And then he filed the bill. And It was unbelievable how on that first day we go to the White House and we have this ceremony, and Kevin brings the postcard. Well, I mean, he's sitting next to Trump. Well, President Trump takes the postcards. I love this idea, and he's holding up the postcard, and that was the picture on the front page of the paper. So we're having these conversations in the townhouse about, what do we need to change on the bill? I never even knew what SALT was. The federal tax code allowed some of these big tax states like New York and New Jersey and California and Illinois and Minnesota. They would go jack up taxes. They'd go to Albany, New York and say, oh, they're going to raise taxes to the hilt. And Governor Cuomo could get away with it because he just turned around and tell all the people in New York, don't worry about it. You can deduct it all on your federal return. And then they go to Trenton, New Jersey, and they'd raise everybody's taxes. You know what they do in California. And guess what? The taxpayers of the country would pay to have that deduction in place to basically bail out high tax states. Guess what's in his bill? He ended that SALT deduction. Ended it. So next time they go try to raise taxes in New York or they go try to raise taxes in California, and they will and they do, they can no longer use that fake argument that don't worry, you can deduct it all on your federal return. So now people are going to be paying a lot closer attention, and I think you're going to start seeing some of those states have to lower their taxes because of what Kevin did. President Trump talked about how big of a deal that was. Ronald Reagan, by the way, tried to get rid of the SALT deduction, and he couldn't get it in that '86 tax reform bill. So there were some really, really big things happen, but then you saw all these companies start announcing bonuses and pay raises to their workers. And it was so exciting to see because the day we go to the White House to announce the bill is sent to the president's desk, it's right before Christmas, he hadn't even signed it. We're waiting to go and do this big press conference, and AT&T announces we're going to give $1,000 bonuses to over 200,000 workers. We're like, my God, this thing isn't even signed into law yet. And President Trump was able to talk about that. We actually were able to start seeing company after company then say, we don't want to be the last one left out. Now we have over 400 major companies that have announced bonuses and pay raises to their workers. And it's all starting to bring people off the sidelines. Millions of people gave up looking for work, millions, during the Obama economy because we literally had less than 2% growth every single quarter. That had become the norm in America. I mean, imagine that. America, the greatest country in the history of the world, and we lost all of our manufacturing base. We were losing jobs, and people, hardworking people said, you know what? There are no jobs out there, and I'm just going to give up because things are so bad, and maybe this is just the way it's going to be. We're just going to become a European state. And this tax cut bill has literally, in just a matter of months, reversed that trend where we're bringing those jobs back. Those people that gave up looking for work are finally getting back to becoming a part of the American dream. That's what Republicans stand for. It's that idea. It's not that anybody has a guaranteed outcome, but everybody ought to have a shot at opportunity. Everybody ought to have that same piece of the American dream. And so what I wanted to really share that kind of struck me the most throughout the whole ordeal, and the fight to come back, just the fight to learn how to walk again, and a lot of that was in question. I never lost faith because I loved my family and I was able to see my family. I was able to do the things that were important to me, that mattered to me. It really kind of crystallizes the things that matter the most in your life. And if I never can run on a baseball field again, sure, I'll be a little disappointed, but you know what? I'll go watch and cheer them on and still appreciate all the things that matter in life. But what crystallized it to me most about what this experience meant, because it was hard to, you're getting people praying for you all over the world, and it was just overwhelming many times. I had world leaders reaching out and calling, and I've met some world leaders in my job. Theresa May from Great Britain, probably our longest ally in the world. Prime Minister Netanyahu, talk about a great world leader. He reached out multiple times. And I remember we talked one night when I was in the hospital, and I've met him a number of times. I think he's truly one of the great world leaders in one of the most challenging places in the history of the world. And he stands tall, in a tiny nation the size of the state of New Jersey, and everybody around him wants to eviscerate him from the planet, and he doesn't relent. And we as a country back the state of Israel, but it wasn't always the case. A lot of our allies had wondered if the United States had walked away from the world stage, and you know what? For a while, our president was spending more time walking around apologizing for American exceptionalism than standing up for our men and women in uniform and giving them the tools they needed. They depleted our military. We got tired of seeing planes fall out of the sky. We finally did something about it. But if you look at Israel, he literally, Netanyahu comes to the Capitol to give one of the great speeches to push back on this horrible deal with Iran, where even if they comply with everything, and everybody knows that Iran cheats on any kind of deal, but even if they complied with everything, they'll have the ability to have a nuclear weapon and deploy it within 10 years. That was the deal that Barack Obama signed, and Benjamin Netanyahu said, I want to at least come to America and talk about it. So we invited him into the House chamber. President Obama tried to tell us not to do it. Guess what happened? We did it anyway. And the world watched. One of the great speeches where you heard and saw a great world leader stand at that podium, the same podium that a president gives the State of the Union, and gutted like a fish, gutted that deal that President Obama signed with Iran, and why it's not only dangerous to the nation of Israel, but why it's dangerous to the United States of America. And there should never be a ray of sunlight between the two anyway. Well, now our friends around the world are standing tall, knowing that we stand tall with them again, that we're pushing back against some of this tyrannical leadership all around the world. Just look at what President Trump has done in North Korea, what he's doing in Iran, what he's doing to stand up for Israel. So we had this unbelievable conversation from the hospital, and he shared with me his brother died in the raid in Entebbe. They're making a new movie about it. And he shared with me that experience of losing his brother to a gunfight, and that he was shot himself. I didn't even know that. And he talked about that. The King Abdullah of Jordan, another friend that we've built over the years, a great Arab leader in a tough part of the world who stood with our allies and the United States of America. He reached out too. And you saw all of this. And, you know, it can all be overwhelming, but to me, it all became very clear. And this is what I want to leave you with, because we've been through rocky times in our country's history. Parties fight, countries fight with other countries. But what is different about America than any other country in the history of the world? What's great about America? It's that we don't just stand up for ourselves. We stand as the beacon of freedom for the entire world. Any other country that believes in freedom, they align with us. But it's not just the countries of the world that believe in freedom. You just saw it again with the latest attempt of an uprising in Iran against their tyrannical regime. There are people that are oppressed around the world under tyrannical dictators that also yearn for freedom. And there's only one place they look. Nobody goes to Moscow to search out the Russian dream. Nobody goes to Paris. I love Paris. We went on our honeymoon in Paris. But nobody goes there to seek out the French dream. There is only one dream. And why did world leaders care about the fact that I was shot? Sure, they cared about an individual, and they cared about me. If they've met me a few times, maybe they say, I hope he does well. But they saw it as an attack on the United States government, on their friend around the world, and the only leader of the world that has the ability to maintain that statue of freedom that shines above our Capitol. But it's a beacon not just for us in this room in Harris County or us all around the country. It's a beacon for anybody in the world that stands for freedom. And that's why they cared about it so much. And that's what we should always remember when we have our differences. And these differences are small when you look at the differences our country has maneuvered through much tougher challenges that we've faced. And we're going to face these too, but understand that when we're facing these challenges, we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're doing it because everybody else around the world is counting on us, because we are it. We are the best game in town to preserve freedom for the world, and you help us keep that freedom by getting engaged at the grassroots level. So thank you for doing what you do to help elect Republicans, because you understand what this freedom is all about. And it's not some God-given right that's just going to last forever because it's a neat idea. It's an idea that we have to fight for every single day, but it's an idea worth fighting for. Thank you for having me.